So our next presentation is from Nielsen, Cyrus, and David Thompson. Nielsen is an information security engineer lead at USAA, where he's had various operational roles since 1997. Currently, as part of the Cyber Threat Operations Center, he provides WebSphere farm support for external and internal web applications and configures USAA's management database. David leads USAA's New Detective Capabilities project and is an active member of the Red Team. He started his security road trip in the Air Force, doing vulnerability assessments for the Air Force Blue Team and working active hunt ops at NSA with 2 deployments to Iraq. Please join me in welcoming Nielsen, Cyrus, and David Thompson.
So, good morning, everyone. We're from USA. It's a financial services institution located in San Antonio, Texas, where we love our breakfast tacos. That's part of the title. So in this presentation, we're going to walk through the path that we took to get MITRE's ATT&CK framework integrated into our process and then into the tools that we build around it. Let's see. So my name is Nielsen Cyrus. I've been with USA for over 20 years. Most of that was in IT operations until I was lucky enough to get a job in the Cyber Threat Operations Center, or we call the CTOC. So I have dual hats in the CTOC, 2 roles. The first is provide the CERT analyst with anything that they need, whether that's automation, scripting, detection development. The second role, my first love, is the infrastructure. Get the events, the interesting events, out of our systems and in front of an analyst so that they can do the analysis and work that case. And again, usually behind the scenes, throw me some energy drinks and I'm happy.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So started my cyber career with the Air Force. All right. with the NSA right down the road. After leaving that active duty, went and worked as a pen tester and threat emulation for Johns Hopkins, as well as again for the Air Force. Been with USAA now for 3 years, and as of last Monday, I actually became the manager of the IR team. So one key tip for you guys is keep pushing ATT&CK because it gets you promoted. Right? Hashtag results may vary. So before we get into ATT&CK, there's someone I want to highlight here who's not upstage. Chris Ferrante over there. So USA has this really cool partnership with the DoD. Right, the majority of our members are either DoD or family members. So we have this partnership called EWI, Education with Industry. And so we take officers and enlisted and send them to USAA for a year to give them that corporate knowledge and kind of get them out of the monotony of the DoD world. So Chris was a Navy intel lieutenant working with the SEALs and doing all sorts of like cool operational intel. Well, the Navy said, hey, your next assignment is cyber, right after you get done with USAA. So our boss took Chris and said, hey, there's this cool thing out there called ATT&CK. You want to try and honcho this and bring this into USAA? And really, we're as far as we are right now with ATT&CK because of Chris. So thank you very much, Chris. Oh, it's not. All right, that's all we got. So before we get in, before we get into agenda, how many managers are in here? Yeah, I can say I am. All right. And then tech guys, or techies, sorry. All right, cool. Anybody here, active duty vets, retirees? Awesome. So from Nelly, myself, from USAA, thank you very much for your service.
Definitely.
All right, agenda. Here we go. So we're going to first talk about pre-ATT&CK, right? How did USAA get involved into ATT&CK? How did we get to even really understanding what ATT&CK is? Then we'll talk a little bit about how we integrated attack into our day-to-day ops. You're going to see a lot of similarities with what we're doing and what GE is doing. Not saying they stole our slides, but so there's going to be some foot stompers that you're going to see a lot of similarities. Then Nelly's going to take over on the way ahead and really talk about what it is that he's been building from a automation and just detection and just a really awesome, bringing everything together perspective. And then we'll take questions. So why did we choose attack? So like most of you, we were using kill chain at the time. Kill chain was really good for post-incident, but it really wasn't, like as things are going on, it really wasn't giving us that operational perspective. It also gave us a really good from 50,000 feet view, but we needed to be in the weeds. Attack, on the other hand, was really giving us those TTPs from the pyramid of pain. And everybody knows, those first few layers are the easy wins. It's the TTPs that are tough. One big thing too is it allowed us to move past just traditional IOCs from a threat actor group by really understanding what each block was and why it was important to the overall picture. It allowed us to disposition cases better. It allowed us to build better automation. It allowed us to build better detections. From a red team perspective, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, the threat actor group data was awesome because we were spending a few days reading reports, reading whatever intel we had on Fin7 and everything else, and trying to emulate, trying to do either a portion of that op or a portion of what they were doing or from a cradle to grave type op. So that really helped us out. And then meaningful, right? At the time, we had no idea if attack was going to be meaningful to us or not. Again, this is all Chris. Once we got through with the self-assessments and really seeing where our gaps were and the areas for opportunity, we definitely at that point knew that attack was going to be worth it. And it was worth looking at, or worth investing time, worth investing money and people and other resources. So gap analysis, why we chose it. Again, right? At that time, we only knew what we knew. Sorry, squirrel. So we only knew what we knew. And until we did that self-assessment, we really didn't know all the different TTPs and all the different commands and other ways to hit those tactics and techniques that we didn't have things built out prior. At the time, our detection pipeline, or our detection, the way we built out detection was very reactionary. What was hot on Twitter? What was on this latest intel report? What did we see at a certain con or wherever? Right? That's that we just pushed forward to the fire, and that's how we were building things. What this really allowed us to do was, all right, where's everything mapped? Where's our gaps? And how do we allocate that time, money, and resources in a better and more efficient way? So from information sharing, I can talk to, is Heather still there? All right. So I could talk to Heather from BOA, and we can give the same exact, like if I say PowerShell, or if I say, see, now I'm on the point. So input capture. If I say input capture, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's the same thing because we're not only are we part of the FSISAC, but we're also part of HISAC, which used to be NHISAC. They're a little bit further along in their attack presence, I guess. So we've really been working a lot with them. And especially on the information sharing side, we've been giving them IOCs and different tips and everything, just as we're receiving from them. Tracking adversarial techniques, as mentioned before, MITRE did an incredible job with this. We saw the demo earlier with Navigator and checking the different APT groups, and you can see all the different boxes that are highlighted. That really allowed us to build into our aggregation / meta case concept, allowed us to build into the different types of automation for our analysts. And then lastly, new tech and research. The first question, if you're coming on site and trying to pitch us some technology, where are you at in the tech? What are you bringing to the fight that we don't already have? Compared to what we already have, what's that delta? What are you going to give me? If I have 5 blocks colored green from vendor Y, why am I going to bring you if you're only going to color 3 and then possibly have 1 or 2 others in red, very similar to GE. And then with regards to tech, it also allows us to justify that cost. If we have that one really hard technique that we cannot, or tactic that we cannot, seem to overcome, then maybe it's worth $1 million, or maybe it's worth, giving Nelly, a couple extra weekends to build out this new capability that we didn't have before. So self-assessment. All right, what do you guys think we use to do our self-assessment? Spreadsheets, yes! Oh my goodness. I feel like you guys are prepared. So our spreadsheet, right? We had a little bit more basic spreadsheet at the time, but Chris really revamped it and turned it into this. This took hours and hours and hours and hours of time for us to get this right. We would not even start a meeting unless we had the IR team, the hunt team, detections, the red team, our ML and data science team, and the automation team all together, making sure that we really understood what was going into these blocks. All right, so one thing I want to foot stomp, right? And you can kind of see it here. Expect a lot of red. And honestly, red is not a bad thing, right? It's better to know what you didn't know than just continue to be, I guess, naive about it, right? Plus, it gives you a starting point. From that point forward, you should only get better. And again, that with metrics, it's another good win. So detection tagging. I absolutely hated tags before we started. There's a guy on our team, Mark. Mark, here's your plug. So if you're watching, there you go. He was pushing tags left and right. And when we developed this new detection pipeline, we needed a way for us to integrate attack, integrate the status of the detections, and really kind of understand from a higher level where everything was at. And the tagging really was that for us. Plus, with all of this data, we were then able to feed that into our own Navigator type tool. And so here's that tool, right? So we can check a box that show me all of our detections that are in prod, show us everything that's in test, show us all the different hunts that we have that are either on a standalone hunt or a repeatable hunt that is using automation. And then on top of all of that, we have our own intel team feeding adversary capabilities and techniques that they've been discovering. Again, this is another one of those cool visualization tools for managers and the C-suite. So hopefully down the road we can open source this, but again, we have to fight with legal. All right. And then lastly, so case enrichment with attack. So one of the big things that we do on top of Git and our Navigator type tool, as soon as a case pops for one of our analysts to work, there's playbooks running that will take that specific case, tie it to attack, tie it to anything else that popped on that box with that user. All sorts of different correlation and automation that's done on the background. But this is specific. This dashboard really is what we are showing our C-suite, our IT leadership, our security leadership and showing them why IT or why attack really is so important to us. And if we went further down, we would be able to show you the true positives versus false positives and all that kind of fun stuff. But we kind of got attacked by our lawyers and said no. So that's my piece, the management piece, and I'm going to hand it over to Nelly, who is by far way more technical than I am. So you're going to enjoy this.
Especially now that you're in management.
Yes.
All right, so the way ahead. So the flowchart icons across the bottom are probably a technology stack that almost everybody here has. Your event management, your case management, your alerting. Some of the interesting ones are like version control and CI/CD, just like GE had mentioned. My children are the blue ovals in the middle. These are the custom applications that we have written to all communicate and share information and also generate the interesting metrics that management wants. So to me, this should have been in the center of that spoke diagram. This is our detection management reporting. So moving out of GitLab with those tags into a standalone system. One thing David didn't mention about GitLab is the complicated scoring algorithm that we paste into every one of those GitLab issues for a new detection. And it's input from either 5 or 6 different areas. Things like, how common is this in the wild? Are there known POCs for this? From an Intel perspective, is this related to threat actors against financial services? So what we wanted to do was pull those different inputs, and it's kind of tough to out of an Excel spreadsheet. It turned out to be tough out of GitLab as well, but we want to end up with that prioritized queue of what detection should we be building out first. So the prioritization of the new detection queue. As with moving to DMR, we also had scripts and rules and jobs laying all over the place, some version controlled, some not. We're going to flip that on its head and make each one of our detections self-contained, version-controlled components. I mean, we have some that are just a simple rule querying our event management system. We even have some that are machine learning jobs. So we want to get those bundled up so if we need to redeploy a new set of detection boxes, we can go through and do it and not worry about losing the underlying pieces that build up the intent of the development or the detection. We also wanted to track the complete pipeline or life cycle of these detections. At a conference like this, I mean, David and I will probably hear 2 or 3 ideas for new detections. We'll send those home through Slack, we'll capture them, put them in the tool, and then we'll go through as a group, get those different inputs, and we'll see where it lands in the queue for development. And then this is also the primary data source for all the other tools that I'm going to cover next. So the first team that provides their input is the Intel team. And the tool for that is Defense Security Posture. Here they work from the actors and the Intel side down to the technique. Then on our side from detections, we link detections to those techniques, and then we inherit all of that work that they've put into it. So by changing here, vulnerability to USA of a certain technique might go from a 3 to a 7 because we rolled out a new system. Or we have some new third-party vendor supplying something for us. So they increase that risk. Well, in the old days, that would stay down there as a low priority detection to develop. Based on that feedback, it now slowly moves up in the queue. Another one of those inputs is our hunt team, and David touched on this some. They're a good idea for new detections. So as they go through, they see something, they don't have a detection idea in place for it yet. They go do a hunt, realize we do need a detection for this, they can transfer that over. Where this has really come in helpful, though, is we might be able to lower the priority if they come up with a good hunt, go out, sweep the environment, and say, there's no sign of it right now, so we can hold off and get this higher priority detection done first. And then recurring hunts. For those that we might not have infrastructure or the capability yet to see this behavior, they could go through and set up a recurring hunt to kind of cover our butts until we can get that detection developed, tested, and into production and tuned. So this has the least relevance to MITRE's ATT&CK framework, but this is my baby out of all of them, so I had to include it for completeness. Going to MITRE's ATT&CK framework, going to this tool set here, we expect and we hope that the time to market for those detections that are sitting in the queue will get faster. The nice thing about this is an analyst, eyes on glass, they can go through and suppress cases. So if we rush a detection to production and one of David's guys is getting overwhelmed in the queue, he's got knobs and dials now that he can go through and tune. This also provides feedback to the underlying detection developer because we keep track of when the suppression was last used and how many times the suppression is fired. So they can go roll that into the underlying endpoint signature or whatever type of signature it is. So a simulation tool, internally this is our Canary framework. Think the work that Red Canary has done with the atomic red team stuff. That's what this does. It tests our plumbing from end to end today. We want to make sure that for every detection that we have, it's a requirement, but it's not followed 100%. For every detection, there's a script, a POC chunk of code, or even just a command to run on a Windows or Unix machine that will test a certain technique or certain underlying behavior, and that should end up in the case management system. The analyst would normally put eyes on glass, but we can look at it from end to end to make sure our plumbing is solid. A coworker found an interesting thing here. He can actually look for neutered detections. In the previous slide with suppressions, if an analyst got carried away and the number of those cases dropped, he's able to highlight that. Another thing is, might be normal behavior, could be just too much suppression. Either way, the detection owner should go back, take a look, and make sure that the true intent of that detection is still valid. Now for Intel Search Tool. Originally, this did not have any relevance to the ATT&CK framework, but it does now. So David mentioned asking your vendors about what they do is related to ATT&CK. They use a third-party Intel provider that previously had not considered ATT&CK. They are now in the process of doing that. What this tool does is, as our Intel team goes into that third-party provider and starts adding indicators of compromise that are of interest to USA or actor groups of interest to USA, they're brought down and we do 30-day retroactive searches against our top 10 to 12 indexes. An additional step that we do is take exact copies of those events and move those to a separate index. Longer retention, so we have those for more historicals. So one thing interesting to see here is as more and more of the indicators of compromise get tagged with techniques and the ATT&CK framework, we'll be able to go through and start building more metrics to show it from a actor and tactic and technique perspective. So this is just management stuff. I'll skip over it since time is almost up. But all of those tools generate a lot of good metrics. In the past, every one of our tools, we had to build in our own dashboards and reporting. Last week, we talked to our enterprise reporting team, and we should be able to get out of that practice. Let us go write the detections and let another team just slurp in all those metrics and build the reports that management needs. So the future. Python for the win. What I want to touch on, though, is the InfoSec community is probably the most innovative bunch of people I have ever met. It's their ideas. It's the open source projects. It's the Sigma project. It's the Atomic Red Team stuff. Everything that we've done has been built on the ideas and projects that y'all have created. And we have a lot of stuff internally. We hope to give back. USA is slow to move. They've been averse to open source, but they are changing, especially this year and going into next year. In the meantime, though, it's the opportunity to present at conferences like this. That's how we can share back, and that's all I have. So with that, it's an honor to be here, and Any time for questions?
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions, so we'll do the throw mic. While people are getting up the cards to ask, oh, we have someone? No. While people are getting up the cards to ask a question, what do you think was there an inflection point in your environment where you went from sort of attack curious to like fully bought in on attack?
I think
So what was that like?
I think it goes back to the hard work that Chris Ferrante put in. Without his bulldog determination to wrangle us all together and get us to sit in a room and focus on a technique at a time, dive into each one of it and say, what does USAA as an organization think of this? I know we would have skipped most of those meetings. I know it probably would still be a spreadsheet sitting out there getting stale. So I think it's just the determination and the leadership that he brought to getting us to embrace it and then helping us mature it to where it is today.
We have a question in the back.
Hey, Jake Leifer from Mandiant here. I think it's especially important, as you were talking about with the simulation component. You know, we build out these rules, and how do we make sure that everything continues to work and process? Parsers break, versions change, that sort of thing. Can you explain a little bit more what that back-end platform looks like, how you support that, you know, how you're running these scripts, and how others might be able to do so?
So I think I sped through it, but one of the requirements we have in a nice flow chart for detection development is you check into version control a canary, whether that's a script or an executable or just a simple command. You check those in and those get pushed out with detection. They get pushed out automatically to a fleet of boxes that we have, our canary boxes, and then they run on various schedules. Some future things that we're looking at is regrouping those into more scenario-based or follow a technique or a tactic or even follow a threat actor. And that's more to keep our CERT analysts busy. Pop one when they're not least expecting it, and it comes from the canary systems. One thing that we want to do, though, and I've looked at, is there's a handful of projects, Atomic Red Team being the biggest one, having some type of conversion mechanism where we can automatically build those canaries based on a lot of the hard work that people have already done. I'm not sure if that completely answers it.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
All right, we probably have time for one more question.
Hi, Tony Gidwani from Threat Connect. So one of the things that's been really interesting in this presentation and the previous one is how you guys have built an entire system, you know, around attack. How long has it taken for you guys to get this up and running? And where was the point where you felt like you were finally starting to hit critical mass and that this was going to stick in your organization?
So David mentioned the EWE project, and we had looked at the navigator off of GitHub. The problem is it didn't speak the same language as our tool sets. And so one of the EWE's, Josh Collins, Air Force Tech Sergeant.
Yep.
So he took the concept from Navigator and then he built it very similar, but then connecting into our various tools, into GitLab, into our case management, to pull in those so we could see the nice, pretty red, yellow, and green. Where do we have gaps? Where do we don't? And I think once he built that custom version, that's where it started the ideas of, well, let's get out of GitLab and let's get a first-rate system where we do better scoring, where we have that queue we can always go to and we can generate those metrics to know where we always stand. All in all, I think within about a 6-month window, a couple POCs, hey, what do you think of this, David? Would this work for detection development? Talk to the Intel team and say, would you guys want to get out of the spreadsheet and start capturing your inputs this way? Hunt is always the last one to go. They're too busy hunting. So they're the ones we're working with now.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, and please join me in thanking Nelson and David.